All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Thinker St. James here, and I have been putting out a couple of videos on the channel about individual pieces of news recently, just a couple. Had one about Matt Hamill gaining the ability to hear, and Themba Gorimbo not being very liked by the MMA community, and more specifically his country of origin, his fellow Zimbabweans. But this is one that I wanted to do live so that if anybody is out there hanging, they can give their opinions on this situation, because it was something I just found out about, and I don't know if it's been covered yet by MMA sources, so I figured I'd talk about it in context, because this was already something I wanted to talk about. If you're watching, you see on screen here, Dana White has been appointed to the board of directors at the company known as Meta. Meta, if you are not aware, is the parent company of Facebook and Instagram. They are a big player in the AI space. They have that thing called Threads, and they are led by Mark Zuckerberg, who I'm sure that you are familiar with in some capacity. So, Dana is appointed to the board of directors. People thought that that was a little bit out of left field, but a lot of people are speculating that that is politically motivated. I would think that that's probably the case, because it also coincides with Meta announcing that they're going to be rolling back some of their restrictions on free expression as they see it. Now, I found this interesting for a couple of reasons. Obviously, Dana is very close with Trump. That's the AP article I have on screen here. Meta's new board includes UFC boss Dana White, a familiar figure in Trump's orbit. We know how tight Trump and Dana are. This is going back years and years and years. They talk about that a little bit in this article. Their friendship dates back to 2001. I was actually thinking about doing an entire video on the history of Trump and MMA at some point, which I could do in the future perhaps, but it's getting more and more intertwined by the day, it seems, you know? Because we had, on the other side of the social media landscape, Elon Musk getting cozy with Trump and showing up to UFC events and the like. So now Zuck, who he was supposed to fight at one point, if you recall, Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, gonna throw down in an MMA fight for the ages. Did not end up happening. Could still happen. Who knows? But that was a rumor for a little while there. So now Zuckerberg trying to get a little bit tighter with Dana, more so than he already was too, to an extent, because if you recall also, Zuckerberg at one point rented out the entire Apex. Do you remember this? There was an Apex card that was entirely empty, except for Zuckerberg and a couple of his people. So both of them have had their time of being cozied up with Dana. And it would seem that Zuckerberg wants to make that relationship a little bit stronger still. So that's the essential gist of this part of it. I guess I'll read a little bit of the article here, give you more context. Meta has appointed 3 new members to its board of directors, including Dana White, the president and CEO of Ultimate Fighting Championship, and a familiar figure in the orbit of incoming President Trump. Funny how all of these people are coming out of the woodwork to use Dana as a conduit. I would think that there's probably a good amount of that happening from all different walks of life. So Dana has kind of the pick of the litter, as it would seem, of who he wants to align himself with and by extension, who gets a closer seat to the president. We live in very fascinating times here. The sport of MMA, which was once a fringe lunatics sport that was relegated to VHS trading community people and a few hundred people inside of a civic center in rural places, or at least in Alabama, that kind of deal. Random cities that would have it, places that were accepting of two people fighting each other with very few rules, at least based on the times, now has international political power. Fascinating. The article continues. The social media company, which owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, is also adding Auto Tycoon, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so there are other people being added. As they said, there are 3 new appointees to the board, but Dana's who we're here to talk about. Tapping White to join the board could be seen as Zuckerberg's latest maneuver to improve ties with Trump, who was once banned from Facebook. Another thing that is an interesting note here. Of course, Facebook gets criticized often by a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. All political walks of life have something negative to say about Facebook, but a very vocal amount of people on the political right in the United States look at Facebook as part of the corporate media elite, whatever the leftist media they would say, or, liberal media. I don't know. There's a lot of different versions of that, how they portray that, but Facebook is just an extension of that, the long arm of big leftism in the United States to a lot of the far right people. So at one point, after the January 6th riots, I believe, where the capital of the United States was overrun by Trump supporters, Facebook had banned Donald Trump from the platform. Zuck is seeing that the president-elect is coming back for round 2, and he wants a more cozy relationship, which from a business standpoint, I think makes a ton of sense, right? Whoever's in power is who you want to be friends with, and that, I think, is one of the biggest takeaways we're going to have from this whole article, and basically the whole messaging of all of this is that everybody, when it comes to the highest levels of power in this country, is essentially a hypocrite. They stand for nothing. Whoever is politically advantageous is who they are going to have their alignment with because it's good for business. Anyway, let's see. Moving on in this article. After Trump won re-election in November, Zuck dined at the president-elect's Mar-a-Lago club in Florida, and Meta donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund. I mean, I guess there's no more of a indication than that. But again, this. Don't think that this is a left or a right issue. This is a business issue. This is corporate America issue right here. Because this is the same as when people back in the day were talking about how Trump used to donate to Democrats. This is business. Whoever is in power is who you want to be friends with. It makes sense. So Zuckerberg dines at Mar-a-Lago. He donates $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund and puts Dana in a position of prominence on the board of directors at Meta. Other big tech companies such as Amazon have donated similar amounts. Exactly. Amazon, who another one back when, well, I mean, I think it's still the case actually, that isn't Jeff Bezos, he's a co-owner of, is it I want to say like the Washington Post or something like that. One of the far left newspapers that's often cited as a liberal source. Don't believe anything that comes out of that newspaper because they're ultra liberal, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So Bezos donating to Trump's inaugural fund. It's business, baby. It's not personal. It's just business. Trump, of course, longtime fan and frequent attendee of major fights. You know, big UFC fan indeed. And that's something that was really one of the big impetuses, I don't know. One of the big reasons that I wanted to do the video about Trump and his history with the UFC and MMA in general is because he lives that shit. You know, think whatever you want to think about Trump's politics. He absolutely is a legitimate fight fan and a fight person. You know, there's a difference in people when they're fight people. He's really one of them. He knows these fighters. He's out there tweeting about Khamzat. I had a whole script that I had written about Khamzat Chimaev that unfortunately I've sidelined because there are parts of it that need to be rewritten. I don't know if I'm going to end up recording it or whatever. But I had written a whole script about Khamzat, and in there they were talking about how Khamzat, because Khamzat has visa issues, he had talked to Dana, and the person interviewing him had said, well, now that Trump has been elected, are you going to have Dana help you out with your visa issues? That's a very real possibility now, that Dana White has direct access to the most powerful person in the country. Already the head of one of the largest entertainment brands in the country as well, or at least growing to be one of them. And now, even more of a political figure because of it. So there is real potential that Dana could call up the president at some point and have major political issues swayed in his favor or the favor of whoever he wants. Potentially. Because Trump is right back to being Trump. You know, he's a shoot from the hip kind of guy, right? Kind of just does whatever comes to his mind. I mean, I have a friend from the Discord, shout out to Bloomis, who was just legitimately asking if Trump was going to be taking over, I think, Greenland, right? Wasn't he talking about going in and annexing Greenland? That's a legitimate possibility. That could happen just because Trump decided it. Just said, hey, we need Greenland, so we're taking it. So you have a guy that makes decisions that way just based on whatever comes into his head at whatever time. And now Dana has access to a dude who will make split-second decisions based on if his friend says it's a good idea. Pretty wild. White, in turn, has had speaking roles at the 2016, 2020, and 2024 Republican conventions and appeared on stage at Trump's election victory party in November, even speaking briefly to the crowd. Dana has been at several Trump events outside of those. You know, he's always been a very vocal supporter. They're legitimate friends. Like, they're just homies. So none of that's surprising in the slightest either. And that's another thing. Like, again, the political aspect of it aside, I think that Dana and Trump are very similar when it comes to their navigation of interpersonal relationships, because both of them are pretty much like essential loyalists at their core, which has its pros and cons. You know what I mean? Like, if you are cool with them, if you are supporters of them and what they're doing, they'll be cool with you. That doesn't take into account what you're doing external of that support, though. So, like, if you are, let's say, the leader of North Korea, and you are cool with Trump, he's cool with you. I actually gave him credit back in the first term for fucking with the North Korean dude. I gave him credit for that. I said that Trump going over there and trying to smooth over some relations with this country that is closed off from the rest of the world and hates everybody, most especially us in the United States. I was like, somebody's got to go over there and try to change this guy's mind. Now, I don't know if it did or did not do anything. They had a couple of nice photo ops. You know, they toured an amusement park or some shit. Like that North Korean amusement park that they got that's like only open when people are in town, and they spend like a month getting it ready and then it just languishes when it's not being used. Whatever. Point is that he's cool with Trump. Trump's cool with him back. So Dana, I think, is very similar to that. You know, and Dana, I think, is a little bit more spread out with it. But not so much, because I think that there are probably, even when it comes to like Democrats, that Trump would be cool with if they're cool with him. You know, he'd be like, oh, well, you know, I don't agree with the Democrat part, but he's okay. You know, that type of shit. Dana, of course, not a politician, so it makes more sense for him to not care as much about those things. But again, if you're cool with this person, they're cool with you. The two of them got tight early in the UFC's ascension. And they've been tight ever since. They talk on the phone regularly. Prior to the election season, there's a great interview, actually. I was going to do a video about that, too. This is before I was just doing, like, the quick one-off, videos about individual topics and stuff. But I still might go back to that one now. Because there was a great interview with Dana and Piers Morgan, who I fucking hate. I cannot stand that guy. He is absolutely abhorrent. He's a terrible interviewer when he does not agree with a person. If he agrees with them, he'll give them all the leeway in the world. If he doesn't agree with them, then he is insufferable to listen to. And I think he's a pompous ass in the first place. But the interview with Dana was actually pretty interesting because Dana doesn't give a lot of like long form interviews about him, like where he himself is discussed. So I thought it was pretty eye-opening to an extent. Like the stuff that he talked about, he talked a little bit about his early life and his family and that kind of stuff. There was some interesting information to come out from that. And one of the things that came out from that we're talking like maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, this interview was, I want to say. So this is way before election time. Dana was saying him and Trump have regular phone calls with each other and talk like homies. So they're just friends. So yeah, doesn't surprise me that this is where we're at now. Is the California fire near you yet, bro? It's coming for you soon. Rick Allen, don't you claim to be like on top of world events and know politics and this kind of stuff and geography and be like this enlightened person? Like, I would think that you would know that Florida and California are on opposite sides of the United States. I know that you only pay attention selectively, but that would be, I think, like some somewhat common knowledge. So no, I'm all right from the fires, my guy. It's actually cold here right now. Apparently there might be snow in North Florida, which is pretty crazy. But global warming doesn't exist, so yeah. I guess there's another reason for it. Like, what do people that deny climate change, like, blame these kinds of things on? Like, what's the reasoning that they have behind all of these major climate-related escalations when it comes to things like the brush fires in California that are increasing regularly, the increase of hurricanes in the Gulf and now spreading to other parts of the country that never had hurricanes before. Florida's getting lucky with that now. I'm sure I just jinxed it, but we're no stranger to hurricanes. Other places that never had hurricanes before at all are now getting hurricanes for the first time. People who are completely and woefully unprepared for hurricanes. But again, climate change does not exist. And I'm not even really saying that it's like legitimately my thing with climate change is this. I do believe that it exists. I think that the climate changes over time, whether it's man affected or not, man-made or not. So you can like even if it is man-made, even if climate change is 100% based on the actions of mankind, what the fuck is the difference? What are you going to do? You cannot stop the march of progress. People still need to have food delivered all over the country in big trucks. I mean, we're trying to do the whole electric car thing. How do you think electricity is made? Generated. You know? You think electricity just comes out of the ground? You just plug the plug into the ground and it just is there? Electricity based on coal production. Right? I mean, or atomic electricity. And you know how the nuclear reactors have had their issues in the past. Shout out to Fukushima Daiichi. So anyway, that's a little aside, since this is an inherently political stream tonight on my otherwise not so political channel. Anyway, back to this article here. White has built the UFC into one of the most valuable, fastest growing, and most popular sports enterprises in the world, Zuckerberg said. I've admired him as an entrepreneur and his ability to build such a beloved brand. That I do legitimately believe Zuck believes. You know, because like Zuckerberg is a fight person himself to an extent. I mean, he's more of like a straight BJJ guy. Like, I don't know if Zuck is like watching a lot of MMA, but he was out there hanging with Volkanovski. I think he walked Volk to the cage at one point, didn't he? So maybe he's more of a fight person than I'm giving him credit for. But I do think he's a fan, and I do think that he sees value in Dana White beyond just politics. I just don't know what Dana White brings to the board of directors at Meta specifically, aside from political gain. Like, what is Dana White's input on AI going to be? Because that's a big part of Meta's long-term strategy, AI and the metaverse, which they're still trying to make the fucking metaverse a thing. No one wants the metaverse. The metaverse is a failure. Ready Player One is not going to happen. I mean, people have thought like, you know, it's one of those things. The metaverse reminds me of 3D television. The 3D television is the example I use a lot because people are like, oh, you know, you say that now, the future, it's going to be so much different, blah, blah, blah. There are certain technologies that humanity is just not going to adopt, I believe. Could be completely wrong. You know, you play this stream back to me in fucking 50 years and I'll eat every word. But I truly believe that there are just certain things that are not going to gain widespread adoption and popularity because it's not, it's antithetical to the way that human beings operate. Like naturally. People do like to be closed off more so now than they ever have been. Obviously, I'm sitting alone in my place, streaming to a lot of people who are probably sitting alone in their places. So yes, I do understand that we are more closed off, but I don't think a lot of people want to sit in a virtual world and navigate through it via a headset like Ready Player One. I just don't see it, at least not with the current technology. And there's a lot of logistics that people don't consider when it comes to the metaverse. I would recommend the Folding Ideas video on the metaverse if you're wondering about some of the details that I'm kind of glossing over there. But anyway, back to the main point. What does Dana White bring to the metaverse or AI or any of this stuff? To get Zuckerberg's opinion about AI refereeing and judging in MMA? I don't know. It's called a carbon emission quota. I guess you haven't heard of the Paris Accords. Yeah, but what the fuck is that going to do? Again, you can try to stop this shit as much as you want. It is not going to stop, is my point. You can fucking try to limit every single person on the planet from emitting carbon. It's not going to happen. It's not reality. Like, unless you are legitimately forcing people to do that in a police state style situation, it's not going to happen. You can have as much carbon emissions as you want. There's going to be a side effect of the next thing that you have. Whatever the next way that you have that you have to have things operate in order to keep the luxuries and amenities of modern living. That will take the place of it. That will supplant it. So stop carbon, it will be something else that will get depleted. I was hearing somebody talk recently about how copper is becoming much more rare. Not because there is less copper like globally, but because the copper that has already been mined has been depleted so much that now getting to copper is harder. So you use up the resource, getting to the resource becomes the harder part. You stop carbon, something else is going to go up. It's a zero-sum game here. Not every single person, companies, bro, they have to adhere to quotas, but Trump administration probably won't care. Well, but again, okay. This is a question that goes back to like my libertarian philosophical debates back when I really did care about politics. What do you think a company is? Define a company. What is it? It's an entity that makes money to a lot of people. Okay, if that's the case, what comprises a company? People. People comprise companies. In the United States, companies are legally people based on the Supreme Court. That Citizens United, you might have heard of. So you can say, oh, it's not every single person, it's companies. Companies are made up of single people that come together for a common cause in making money. You can limit the company itself, but the people are the ones that are being served. The people that are the customers are the service sector of the company. The company is comprised of people that are also consumers. There is no individual versus company when it comes to something as large scale as climate change. Do you see what I'm trying to impart here? Any fucking way. So, finishing up with this part of the article here, Zuckerberg is active in mixed martial arts. He's not active in mixed martial arts. He's active in BJJ and a consumer of the UFC brand. See? Zuckerberg, individual, consumer, head of company. Zuckerberg and fellow billionaire Elon Musk seemingly agreed to fight in a cage match in 2023, but never happened. We talked about that. Again, that is an interesting part of this. You've got Zuck on one side, Elon on the other side, both trying to cozy up to Dana to get to Trump. It's a quadruple. They're not a couple. They're not a thruple. They're a quadruple. Fucking ridiculous. And then the article just ends up with the other people that have been appointed to the board. But so that's part one of this situation here, right? That Zuckerberg has appointed Dana to the board of directors. Now, something else that is important to note, and I think we talked about it a little bit in the article, or maybe not actually, but if it was not mentioned in this article, one of the big things, I think I said it at the beginning of the stream outside of the article, one of the big things that Meta is pushing now is, or pushing, I mean, they're rolling back. They're loosening up their restrictions on free expression, they call it. Because for a long time, Meta had been one of the more restrictive platforms when it comes to what you can and cannot say on their site, in their groups, in their comments. A lot of times people would see comments that get TOS'd, for lack of a better term, you know? Community guidelines comes in and stops you from being able to say what you want to say on Meta. So in addition to Dana getting named as a board of director inductee here, Meta says that they are going to be scaling back the amount of for lack of a better term, censorship on the platform. And a lot of people, including myself, were like, oh, this is good. Except, much like their counterpart at Twitter/X in Elon Musk, it's selective. And I'll tell you how I know that it's selective and why I wanted to do the stream today. Boom. This is from 404media.co. And like I said at the beginning of the stream, I don't know if a lot of MMA media has been covering this yet. This just came out yesterday. But I actually signed up for an account at 404 Media just so that I can read the entirety of this article, because Facebook, right after, not even right after, immediately as they announce that Dana is a member of the board of directors, they start deleting internal employee criticism. They are censoring their own people. These fucking tech bros that run our speech platforms are a bunch of fucking hypocrites. Zuck is a hypocrite. Elon's a hypocrite. The current fucking YouTube person is probably a hypocrite. Susan Wojcicki, back when she was still alive, God rest her soul, was the punching bag of Facebook, of YouTube for so long as CEO of the company because of the way that they enforce selectively their policies. Policies across these platforms are selectively enforced, is what I am saying, and it is no more apparent than right here, right now. So this article goes into it. Of course, you see Zuck, you see Dana. Insulting, criticizing, or antagonizing our colleagues or board members is not aligned with the CCE. And the CCE stands for, I forget, it was in here early, I thought. Where does it say what CCE is? Community Engagement Expectations. So the CCE is the internal Facebook ICE. Yeah. You think Armin is going to club and sub Islam? It's possible, man. Armin is looking fucking jacked. I don't know if you saw those recent pictures of him. Now, of course, that always is the case, though. Michael Chandler was looking jacked as fuck before his fight with Charlie. So, I never really go off of that. I don't go off of their physique. I don't go off of training footage. I would say probably not, but there is potential for it to happen. This is going to be a close fight, I think. The first fight was a good fight. So, yeah, is there potential for that to happen? Probably. But it's fucking Islam, man. He's just been so goddamn good. I don't know if he has faced the same type of test that Armin brings to the table. But I say that, and then Charlie Olives would have been someone with a similar-ish kind of at least makeup when it comes to what they bring to the table style-wise. And Oliveira was taken out rather quickly. So I'm still tentatively siding with Islam, but Armin, I think, is probably the best shot that we have right now of someone getting that off. So there, yeah, I mean, there is potential for that. It's definitely a not zero chance. Anyway, all right, let's get into this 404 article a little bit here. Meta's HR team is deleting internal employee criticism of new board member, UFC president, and CEO Dana White at the same time that CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced to the world that Meta will go, well, quote unquote, go back to our roots around free expression, 404 Media has learned. Some employee posts questioning why criticism of White is being deleted are also being deleted. So not only are they deleting criticism, they are also deleting questions as to why criticism is being deleted. They're double censoring. Bro. These tech companies are fucking hypocrites. We're going to make this a more free and open expression, platform for expression. We're going to make this platform more free and open to your thoughts and feelings, except for those thoughts and feelings that bother us. That was Elon Musk's whole problem, and still is. Elon is a little baby when it comes to Twitter. It's a free speech platform if you say the things that I like. Blue Sky, the new liberal safe haven, is another bullshit, hypocritical place. I signed up for Blue Sky just so that I could make sure that I had Yama Show on there. I didn't even put anything out. I think I got one thing on Blue Sky, just a link to the channel. Already, they're censoring the Unknown Fighter logo. Fucking TikTok banned Yama from the platform. I assume because of the logo. They wouldn't even tell me why we got banned. All of these platforms are selective enforcers. They are Big Brother when it comes to your speech. You can say a lot of things, just not the things that we don't like. Monday, Zuckerberg made a post on a platform for Meta employees called Workplace, announcing that Meta is adding Dana White, John Elkin, and Charlie Songhurst to the company's board of directors. Zuckerberg's post on Workplace was identical to his public announcement. Employees' response to this was mixed, according to screenshots of the thread obtained by 404. Post the shots, bro. Some posted positive or joking comments. Major W, one employee posted, "We hire Conor McGregor next after work sparring." Another said, "Joe Rogan may be next." A third said, a fourth simply said, "Lol." That would have been my response, would have been lol. As in, lol, why the fuck does Dana White bring, like, what does Dana White bring to the table in any way, shape, or form when it comes to the inner workings of Facebook and Meta? I mean, I don't get it. Again, the big initiatives that they've been talking about when it comes to Meta specifically is AI and the metaverse. Their fucking virtual reality world. I mean, I guess you could say maybe UFC content in the metaverse. Like, if we're trying to be like less cynical about it, like, well, what's the actual reality of it? Yeah, maybe UFC in the metaverse, but he didn't need to be on the board for that. What else? AI. Again, I guess, you know, AI applications in sporting, perhaps. Dana has already talked about AI for ranking, so maybe there's something there. I don't know. But lol would still have been my response. Anyway, the article continues. But other employees criticized the decision and raised the point that there is video of White slapping his wife in a nightclub. Oh, yes. We all forget about that. Yama 1 material. The very first story that was ever covered on Yama was Dana White laying hands on his lady. How quickly we forget that that was the case. Now, a lot of fight people don't give a fuck. They didn't at the time. White was not arrested and was not suspended from the UFC for the domestic violence incident. A lot of people in the community at the time didn't think that there should have been any backlash at all. Now, I don't necessarily think that he needed to be arrested for it. I mean, maybe. If she had wanted to press charges, then perhaps. I mean, if you go back and look at the footage, she was being unruly. She hit him first. Look, you can look at that a couple of different ways. There is never a good justification for laying hands on your lady, of course. That's baseline. However, there are levels. I think that that's just the reality of it. If there's, if Cyborg is coming up to you and throwing legitimate punches, I mean, you're just supposed to cower? Again, so there's levels. Was he supposed to be arrested for it? Whatever, you can have your opinions about it. He was not suspended from the UFC for the incident, though. That, I think, is a little bit of a different issue, because that signaled that the rest of the organization, anybody else, I mean, it signaled two things to me. It signaled, one, that no one else in the organization has as much power as Dana, which I think you already kind of knew, but if you needed any further proof, there's your proof. And two, that even with that dynamic, even with Dana being in the power seat, there's not enough groundswell amongst the people around him for what I would think would be the right thing. I don't think that Dana needed to step down. I don't think that Dana needed to be ousted from the sport or ostracized from the UFC, but I do think that some type of response would have been warranted, aside from Dana saying, this is a private family matter. That's all I want to say about it. I've got to explain it to my family. That's enough of a punishment. I mean, yeah, that's what you are able to say because you're the one in the middle of it, dude. The organization probably should have done something. She hit him first. That's important to keep in mind. Don't care too much. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I just said. She was drunk. I mean, you could tell. It was a situation that got out of hand. I actually kind of agree with his assessment. It was a family issue. I mean, it's not right that it happened, but really more of what it looked like to me was that he was trying to settle her down and just didn't do it the right way. So, if you want my unbiased opinion about it, based on the video footage outside of the Emma episode from episode 1 of the show, yeah, she was getting unruly. She was hitting him. You could tell she was like yelling and stuff. They're in a nightclub. They're in Mexico. They're drinking. After he wrangled her up, he just kind of held her pretty much. Then they got broken up. So, I mean, he was just trying, it's the Chris Rock dealy there, it's the way that Chris Rock was talking about it in the special, I won't hit a woman, but I'll shake the shit out of her. That's Chris Rock's words, not mine, but that's the basic idea. It's he's not beating his wife. That's what I'm saying about there being levels to it. He's not beating his wife. She was getting crazy. She was throwing hands. She was getting out of line herself. She needed to be calmed down. It was not the right way to calm her down, but it was not domestic abuse. This is not battered woman syndrome. This is not I hit my eye on the doorknob. You know what I mean? She didn't have a shiner because of it. Keep it in perspective. However, from public perception, this is something that should have been addressed, I think. Purely from optics, even if you don't want to think of it as the worst way of the situation being handled. Again, if you're thinking of it the way that I'm describing here with there being levels to it and everything. Again, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that there are levels to it, and that was, on a level that is not the same as a dude who's out here smacking the hell out of his woman, for not cooking the chicken right. Either way, it still happened. It was still public knowledge. It was still on TMZ. I think that there should have been some response from the organization. I think there should have been some apology from Dana White. I mean, really, I think he essentially apologized, but it was more, again, you should never do that. I think that it should have been handled differently, I guess is what I'm getting at. So anyway, the point is that, but really all of that issue there, what I'm talking about with that, is secondary to the fact that it's perception from people outside of the fight world. That's what you got to keep in mind with that when it comes to this. These are not fight people. These are fucking nerds. You want to talk about the ultra liberals with the multicolored hair and the polyamorous, lifestyles and all this type of shit. Your new age people, the bold new world of what humanity is trending towards, which I personally have no problem with, but a lot of people do. I see it from an outsider's perspective when it comes to all of this, because I will criticize all of these people on all sides of the aisle because they're all a bunch of fucking idiots. Conservatives, idiots. Liberals, idiots. Fucking, you know, the Antifa fucking blue-haired transgenders, idiots. The alt-right fucking, Richard Spencer-haired Nick Fuentes motherfuckers, idiots. So my point is, looking at it objectively here, these are the people, when they read this shit, that's what they're taking away. These are not fight people. They don't know this fucking world. They're not involved with this shit. They're a bunch of people who push buttons on keyboards all day long, making sure that your likes get tallied up correctly. When you're on there, fucking messaging your friends about, you know, what kind of fucking cars they like or whatever the fuck you do on Facebook. I don't even know what people do on Facebook anymore. I'm never on it. I've got Facebook down to a fucking very, very limited capacity where it's all either MMA or VHS tapes, basically. That's the shit that I like has been streamlined on Facebook. So I'm not privy to the rest of the way that the world uses Facebook, and I'm certainly not privy to the lifestyle that a lot of these fucking dweebs are living that are making Facebook possible for the rest of us. My point is, when these workers at Meta find out that Dana White is working there, that's what they go to. And in this instance, from the bird's eye view, I don't think that they're 100% wrong in saying, damn, we've got a dude who laid hands on his lady and got away scot-free because he runs the company on our board. Now, they drag Connor into it. That's the next thing here. That's garbage. That's absolutely fucking garbage because Connor has nothing to do with any of this. Connor and the assault case, I've talked about that plenty of times on the channel. I talked about that for 3.5 hours in a video if you want to go watch all of what I've said about that case. He has nothing to do with this. I don't know why he was brought into this, but one of these people says, kind of disheartening to see people in the comments celebrating a man who is on video assaulting his wife and another who was recently convicted of the R word. That R word being rape, of course. One employee commented, referring to White and McGregor. I can kind of excuse individuals for being unaware, but Meta surely did their due diligence on White and concluded that he did, and what he did is fine. I feel like I'm on another planet, another employee commented. We have completely lost the plot, said a third. This is what you will be getting from this. So to think that this is an unwarranted backlash, I don't think is true. B, how could you not have seen something like this? Well, Facebook, I guess, either didn't see it or didn't care, because if people start talking shit, what do? Turn on the censor machine. Memory hole that shit. Big Brother is watching your workplace comments. It's the opposite of what is going to happen. All right, yeah, whatever, Rick Allen. Yeah, fucking great, dude. Several posts critical of White were deleted by Meta's internal community relations team. The internal community relations team, dude. That is the inside Gestapo. That's the internal affairs of the Meta secret society, the Meta cabal. That's crazy. Who's watching the Watchmen? Well, we know. The internal community relations team. Several posts critical of White were deleted by Meta's internal community relations team as violating a set of rules called the Community Engagement Expectations, which govern internal employee communications. There's your HR. In the thread, the internal community relations team member explained why they were deleting content. I'm posting a comment here with a reminder about the CCE, as multiple comments have been flagged by the community for review. It's important that we remain a respectful work environment where people can do their best work. We need to keep in mind that the CCE applies to how we communicate with and about members of our community, including members of our board. Do not criticize the boss. Bro, talk badly about the party, get your 30 lashes. Caning motherfuckers like in Singapore. Some serious Big Brother shit. Insulting, criticizing, or antagonizing our colleagues or board members is not aligned with the CCE. Fall in line, bitch. Fall in line. In 2022, Meta banned employees from discussing very disruptive topics. Quote unquote, very disruptive topics. Now, granted, I do understand, to play Zuckerberg's advocate over here, I understand that disruption of this type is not good for business because you don't want your company to be engaging in internal fighting and infighting. You don't want your people to be going at each other's throats when they're supposed to be coding your website correctly. I get this. However, if you have these platforms where people are supposed to be able to react, again, what do you expect? This is what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm talking about when I say, like, looking at this, like, from 1,000 yards away. Like, did they not expect that their type of people were going to have this response? Did the people responding expect to not be censored by the hypocrites that they work for? All of this is making perfect sense to me. It's just funny to me that it is such a front and center example of it happening right after Facebook claims that they are going to be loosening their standards when it comes to free expression. Free expression for when you're using the platform as a civilian. When you are on duty at this company, you do not have the same luxuries. Of course, that is the case for any employee. It's the same argument for back when Colin Kaepernick was kneeling for the national anthem and people were saying, well, you're talking about your politics at your job. You should just be doing your job. If you don't like the people at your job telling you to stand for the national anthem, you can get another fucking job. And that's true of Facebook too. So really, there's not anything super wrong with them doing this type of censorship. However, the fact is that Facebook, as one of the major outlets where communication happens in general now, social media has taken over the discourse on this planet, which is a big reason why we have gotten to where we have gotten, period. Every single person yelling at the top of their lungs, every stupid fucking thought that crosses their mind. It's a little bit different, is my point here. If you're a small company, perhaps you limit these types of interactions. People don't speak as loudly. You are a community. How big is Facebook in general? How many? That's a good question here. Meta. How many employees does Meta have? As of December 2023, Meta has approximately 67,000 employees. Over 67,000 people work for this company. How do you think you are going to keep that many people in line? When it comes to these types of things, they have an entire internal network for people to have conversations with each other, a la Facebook for Facebook. They have a Facebook for their Facebook. Do you not think you are going to get the same shit here? So when you post this kind of stuff, people are going to have this response. All of this is making complete sense. It's just goofy as fuck, especially given the circumstances. Anyway. One employee posted, why do critical comments of these announcements let's start that over. One employee posted, why do critical comments of this announcement keep getting deleted? Lol, my comment got CE'd too. Good stuff, a second posted. A third said, I think it's particularly fascinating that none of the comments I have seen disappear containing any specifically prohibited content under the CEE and must have fallen under disruptive content. And if any criticism of company decisions falls under the disruptive content bucket, the future of the company is looking bleak. There you go. You are in a hive mind. If you are not part of the hive mind, you are cast out of the hive mind. Either that or you are silenced before being cast out. Again, these are big brother tactics and that type of thing. First, you are silenced. If you continue to disobey, you will be re-educated. If you do not re-educate, you will be deleted. Or, in the case of 1984, specifically, you'll be re-educated and then still deleted. Disruptive content. No disruptive content at the platform where free speech is being once again championed. Tracy Clayton, a Meta spokesperson, told 404 that no changes to the CEE have been made and stressed that some criticism has been left up. There are also several comments that have expressed criticism that didn't violate the CEE that remained up, Clayton said. Our CEE is very nuanced, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. Yeah, very nuanced. You know what very nuanced means? It means that we will pick and choose when we want to enforce things, and then we can always fall back on some clause that we have bent to the specific situation at hand. So if we say that this comment is something that we don't want to see on our platform, well, subsection 2, paragraph B says X, Y, and Z. Well, if you interpret it the way that we interpret it here, it violates the CEE and thus is disruptive content. The hypersensitive moderation of employees internally criticizing major public figures is particularly notable given that Tuesday morning, Zuckerberg announced that Meta would get rid of many of its content moderation rules on its platforms. It's time to get back to our roots around free expression and giving people voice on our platforms. Here's what we're going to do, Zuckerberg posted. Replace fact checkers with community notes. Starting in the US, simplify our content policies and remove restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are out of touch with mainstream discourse. That I am completely fine with. I think that is great. Wish that everybody would do all of that. Let everybody say all of their dumb shit. Let it all be said. Get the dumb shit out into the open. It's sad and really telling in our current times how many people believe a whole heap of dumb shit, but you do not limit free speech. That is an absolute. Joel Kaplan, Meta's new president of global affairs and the former Republican political operative who served in the George W. Bush administration, posted about the changes internally on Workplace, saying the policies were intended to foster more speech and fewer mistakes. So what you're seeing here is kind of a familiar narrative when it comes to the right's quote-unquote love of free speech, because often you have these people who try to claim that they are advocates of free speech on the political right in the United States, and really what they are is people who just want to be able to say their shit and don't want the other side of the equation to be able to say their shit. They are fucking hypocrites. A lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot. So what we're seeing, though, is that Zuckerberg and Meta, in order to adapt to the current landscape, are moving more to the right. They have donated to the Trump inaugural fund. They've got a political activist from the Republican Party as their president of global affairs. They are moving towards taking away restrictions on topics that are traditionally talking points of the right. And they've added UFC President Dana White to the board of directors. But people who are critical of that, they don't get their say. So I don't know. Is it actually free speech? Is it actually a move towards free speech? Beats the fuck out of me. One employee brought up this apparent disparity. Given Zuck's message this morning on decreasing content moderation on our platforms, is that also going to apply internally? Nope. The rules for employees, the internal content moderator responded, are different than the rules for the public. The CEE, which is focused on mitigating the potential for disruption and allowing us the space to work, ensuring a respectful work environment and protecting company information, is different from our external content policies. Exactly. Which is fine. That in and of itself is fine. It's just a funny irony that you're doing one thing on one side and another thing on another side. Rules for thee, not for thee. Rules for them, not for you. Rules for thee, not for me. Rules for them, not for you. Curious to know if we can expect a similar shift to more speech in internal workplace posts/groups, another employee asked. CEE is quite chilling, another said. Basically, any large scope critical post I make gets at least one message from the internal community relations. Yeah. And again, like I've been saying over and over here now, there has to be some level of difference in the rules. There has to be some version of what's acceptable internally with the company as opposed to what is acceptable for the public. I do get that. But it's the application. And again, the selectiveness of the application. It's always case by case. That's what I kind of at this point just wish that these companies would be more honest about what they actually want. Because if they were more honest about what they actually want, instead of trying to play this fucking game of being fair and then just not doing it like behind closed doors, then at least people who use these platforms would be able to navigate the bullshit. Same with this situation for these employees. Just tell us what we can and can't say. Like here, I guess they're getting a little bit of that. They're getting the company saying that criticizing the board of directors is something that they can't do. So fair enough then. At least that's something that they know that they cannot do. I wonder if you're an employee of Facebook and say these types of things on your personal Facebook, if you'd get in trouble at the company. That's a good question. In a comment that has not yet been deleted, an employee posted, "Since my other comment was taken down, I'm just going to let everyone know that I, for one, love my wife and daughter. And to top it off, I also respect other people." Yeah, very soy response there. That soy passive aggressiveness. But that person's navigating. That person's navigating. Say it without saying it. Sad that you have to do that, but they won't tell you what you can or cannot say. That was what I was kind of getting at there. It's like, I wish that they would just be honest about what their actual guidelines are. These are the things that if you say them in any capacity, we're going to come after you. Just be that honest about it. Fuck, I wish it was that honest for YouTube. If they would just tell you a list of words that you can't say so that all these people who have to jump through hoops for their monetization could navigate that correctly, then there you go. That'd be a much better place. People having to say that, somebody unalived themselves as opposed to someone committed suicide. You know what I mean? They're saying the same fucking thing. They just have to say it a different way. So if you want people to have to go through your fucking dog and pony show, just be honest. Just be honest. They are liars and hypocrites. Our CEE has nothing to do with the announcements made today. Internal and external moderation are separate, and I'll repeat that it would be inaccurate to report that we're loosening restrictions externally while tightening them internally, Tracy Clayton, a Meta mouthpiece, told 404 Media. It's important to note here that these comments were, as you see there, flagged by the community for review. Further background, our CEE is designed to help minimize disruption. Our CEE is designed to help minimize disruption so employees can focus and remain productive. Why have the ability to have these free-form styles of conversation if that's your aim? You should just have these things completely restricted to only work-related topics then. And nothing out, no opinions. No, don't let people have their opinions. If that's the way that you want this to operate, if that's the goal of what your secret police is, just don't let people do it at all. Have that as your company policy. Oh no, that's too restrictive. General public wouldn't agree with that. Well, apparently the general public is just okay with anything now. And also, they're so powerful at this point that the general public's opinion does not matter. That is the same for X. That is the same for Meta. That is the same for YouTube. That is the same for all of the major social media platforms. It is too ingrained in our society. They are monopolies. They are monopolies that are beyond reproach. They are beyond the scope of any one government. They are global. People talk about a new world order. Social media is your cabal. And within the cabal now, Dana fucking White, bringing it right back to MMA. So there you go. So that's that story. I just thought that that was a funny situation there, and one that deserved a little bit of attention, because I don't think that this is something that has been picked up on by MMA press. Slightly outside of the MMA world, but still connected through Dana. Let's move on to a little talk about Donn Davis of the PFL. You know, this is like the boss rush stream today. We're talking about the bosses here. So we got Donn Davis, right? He is the big boss man of the PFL, and someone that I follow a decent amount because I am often on LinkedIn for my work, for the gig that I do. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. Donn Davis is on LinkedIn a lot. In fact, Donn Davis posts on LinkedIn so fucking much, I think that that's really the majority of what he does. So recently, Donn Davis posted a LinkedIn that has been going around, a LinkedIn post. And he laid out a couple of things that were negative for the PFL. And we're going to go there in a second, but I did have this clip because I have not talked about this one yet, and I have not brought it up to Chase on the show. Last week's fights, that is. The podcast that I do with Chase Parton right here on the channel, Monday nights. I haven't talked to Chase about this, but this is classic. So Donn Davis, your big boss man, the guy who is for all intents and purposes, the Dana White of the PFL, did a town hall with, what's his name? Oh God, why do I always forget this guy's name? Heck, it's right there on the screen. I'm an idiot. Mike Heck, yeah. Did a town hall with Mike Heck, who is of MMA fighting. And he was answering community questions, which I thought was good of him, you know, being a man of the people, answering their questions. So a couple of questions get asked here. This is towards the end of the stream. And in a second, you'll hear what Donn has to say when Mike Heck, via a person, I guess on Instagram or wherever they're getting their questions from, asks this very pointed query here that Donn has a little bit of trouble answering.
What else we got? Cole, what is Donn's favorite all-time MMA fight? So Donn, you have a night out, you go home, and you're just like, man, I want to watch a fight. What's the first fight you're going to find?
So people who are doctors don't watch medical shows. People who are lawyers don't watch legal shows on TV. I'm aware of everything that's going on because it's important for business. But I don't want to watch other people's MMA shows for enjoyment. You know what I'm saying? I get a lot of MMA, right? You know, so I don't sit there and say, let's kick up and watch me a good KSW. You know, this is not, it would never cross my head, right? So to me, I'm aware of everything that's going on from a business standpoint, but I would never sit there and say, That's my relaxation away from work. This would be, I'm working, I'm taking in what's working for them, I'm understanding what's going on. But if I'm away from work, I'm away from work. P.S. I'm never away from work. Building a company is hard. I'm on year 7 of no days off, no vacation. I'm just that 62-year-old entrepreneur that's just pain, challenge. I'm on.
So amazing PR training there for Donn Davis to completely sidestep the question, because no one asked him what his favorite UFC fight was. No one asked him what his favorite KSW fight was. No one asked him what his favorite Bellator pre-purchase was. No one asked him what his favorite Ryzen fight was. One championship. No one asked him about any other organization. He could have said a PFL fight. Didn't have an answer there. So he just says, no, I don't watch other people's MMA products when I'm not working. So Mike Heck, very rightly, says this after that very eloquent way to completely sidestep a completely valid question that he just did not have an answer for.
What's the best fight you've ever watched? Even in the building, what's the best fight you've seen?
Well, it's interesting. I'm going to answer it differently. It's boxing for me. I grew up, I'm a little bit older, so I grew up boxing. And, and so to me, I was very much shaped by Hagler, Hearns, Tyson.
No MMA. So this Dana White of the PFL goes to boxing. He pivots to boxing because that's the last combat sport he actually watched when he is the front and center when it comes to the PFL, an organization that he is on LinkedIn all the time talking about. He is a fascinating person. If you have a LinkedIn account, I highly, highly recommend following Donn Davis, because the delusion of this man in the way that he sees the PFL and the way that the world sees the PFL is very, very striking. They could not be farther apart. You have an entire discourse surrounding the PFL as a promotion that everyone is wondering what is actually happening with. They're constantly talking on Twitter about how the PFL is a dead brand, a dying brand, a brand that never really got off the ground to begin with, something that is not a quality product. Not even really stuff I believe, honestly. I like the last PFL event that I watched. All 10 hours of it. Fucking 9-hour commitment between 2 events on one day in Saudi Arabia. Pretty wild for their World Championship event. But it was good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine fights. I thought it was a really decent, fun night of fights. Day into night of fights with all of them combined. But this dude talks about it like it is, he really reminds me of like the dude on the Titanic saying everything is fine as the ship is sinking. But this post specifically has been going around, and I think that it's an interesting look at the mentality here based on some of the circumstances. So I'll read some of this. Donn Davis, of course, founder and chairman of the PFL. Founder and chairman of the PFL cannot name a single MMA fight that he enjoyed. Couldn't pick one. I guess you could say, again, playing Davis's advocate, you could say that he didn't want to name any specific fight just because you don't want to play favoritism. But that's not what that shit was. That's not what that fucking shit was. You know that you could have said Kayla Harrison versus Larissa Pacheco. You could have said fucking, any one of the Dagestani guys on the most recent tournament there that were fighting that did really, really well. Fucking any of the winners. Brendan Loughnane. There's plenty of people that you could have said. Fucking Dakota Ditcheva having the year of her life. I mean, this is a little bit earlier. This was in October, but Dakota Ditcheva was already tearing it up in that organization. You own Bellator now? Pick a fucking Bellator performance. One of the pit bulls, AJ McKee. Fucking anybody, dude. No, nobody. But founder and chairman of the PFL, Donn Davis. Building companies is really hard with many setbacks, filled with uncertainty and pain, requiring creativity and perseverance. Most social media posts celebrate the triumphs of success, and I had a great time last week doing that PFL post. So I guess he had posted all of the grand successes of the PFL, which is what he generally does. But this post is the opposite. This post celebrates survival. We all took hard punches in 2024 and are still here to fight. We fight on, Donn. I'm telling you, this dude, I got to give him credit for that at least. He stays positive in the face of a lot of things that would indicate that there's not a lot to be positive about. Donnie boy, positive ever thus. We all had bad things happen. And survived. 5 bad things that happened to PFL in 2024. This is Donn Davis's top 5. Number 1, numerous potential new investors wasted thousands of hours of our time, and time is so precious. So, investor problems. That is certainly one that I would say is on the lower side of the problem, because the Saudi Arabian money is really what's propping this thing up. It's going to be interesting to see how long that will last and how far they can stretch that dollar. How long Saudi Arabia is going to be interested in maintaining this relationship. Hopefully the event that they held in Saudi Arabia that I was alluding to, their that Numa or not Numa, Nema? North or forgot the what was it? North Africa, Middle East, Nama, whatever. They had one regional tournament and one world tournament on the same night. Hopefully that was good for them. I felt so bad for that rapper that was there, rapping to an empty fucking arena. Hey, good Lord. Anyway, so potential investors wasted their time. Problem, but not the hugest problem. Number 2, major new advertiser agreed to deal, was in final contract, and then new management came in and stopped deal. So they had a major advertiser that they were going to secure, and somebody stepped in to say no dice. Problem. But I, again, would say that this is not a huge problem for the brand, because they do have a lot of major sponsors already, or advertisers, sponsors via advertisement. They've got Bud Light. They've got GNC. They have a lot of prominent, decent names as far as major advertiser dollars are concerned. And their agreement with outlets like ESPN Plus help with that. Number 3 is really the one that I think everybody was keying into. And this is something we have talked about on last week's Fights, my podcast with Chase Barton. Number 3, some Bellator star fighters complained on social media about not fighting, making PFL look like not meet our contracts. Well written. Some Bellator stars complained on social media about not fighting, making PFL look like they're not meeting their contracts. Yeah, they fucking did. It's nice that he sandwiched that very, very huge point in amongst all of these other little minor setbacks, essentially, because that has been the fucking talk of the town when it comes to the PFL and Bellator, PFLator. That's all anybody can talk about. Fuck it, you got so many people from that side of the world talking about how they cannot get booked for their fights, talking about the bad business that the PFL is doing in their opinion. Their star fighters want to defect. Really, really fucking bad. So I just love that. This is such a fun way, a fun and cutesy way for him to sandwich that information in the middle of all this other shit. When that is such a glaring problem that he has, that the organization has. That is, anybody talking about PFL, if you are talking about PFL in the MMA discourse right now, you are talking about how their fighters are not getting booked and how pissed their fighters are. People are going on diatribes, fighters I'm talking about, are going on diatribes fucking 5 posts long on X right now, talking about how they cannot get booked, talking about wanting to get out of their contracts. Gegard Mousasi was on the MMA Hour back when that was still the MMA Hour, before Ariel Helwani jumped ship to start whatever thing he's doing with Yahoo Sports now. I think it's called Unranked or something like that. No, I forgot what it's called. Unchallenged, not Undisputed. Might be called Undisputed. I don't remember. Something. Whatever. Ariel Helwani is doing a new thing over there with Yahoo Sports. That's his new major deal that he has secured. And power to him. But back on the MMA Hour, Gegard Mousasi talking about how they won't even pick up the phone at PFL headquarters to talk to him. Talking about Diego Lima not being able to get fights, I believe. Either Diego or Douglas, one of the Lima brothers. Fucking so many people at the organization are up in arms. And you can say that potential new investors wasting thousands of hours of time and major advertisers not coming through is a big problem. Yes, I'm sure it's a big problem. But you want to know what that's not? It's not a forward-facing problem. That's the difference. That's the delusion in here. Because the only way that the general public would know about investors wasting your time or advertisers pulling out is this post right here. I would never have known about any of that stuff. You know what I would have known about? Fucking Patricky Pitbull going on social media talking about how bad he wants to get out of his contract. Star fighters that have platforms that you are not honoring your end of the deal with, in their opinion, at least, wanting to jump ship vocally. That's what people are keying into because that is what is getting out to the general public, not your internal affairs. We're talking about forward-facing information here, Donnie boy. So let's read some of the other ones. Even though that really is all that you need to know about this post. I think that 1, 2, and 3 sum up this post in a nutshell. But what are the other 2, just out of curiosity? We are growing so fast with our new international leagues that costs in some regional areas are way too high. You know what that signals to me? That you're biting off more than you can fucking chew because your model is ridiculous. Having PFL Central or Main or whatever you want to call it, the actual PFL brand, and then all of these little satellite PFLs, how do you think that you're going to be able to effectively operate all of that? You're going to have a PI in every region, you know, your version of the PI. You're going to have local tournaments in every region. You're going to be moving in on established regional brands. You're talking about PFL Africa. You think that the EFC is just going to roll over in Africa? One of the most established MMA brands, if not the most in that region. They serve all of Africa from what I understand. I believe that they're South Africa based, but if you're an African fighter, EFC is where you want to fight to make a name for yourself. Dricus du Plessis, Temba Garimbo. So you're just going to muscle in and try to take that over. When these regional promotions have their own fan bases and their own followings and their own establishment within their communities, you're going to come in and start fucking colonizing. You're colonizing regional promotion and finding out that maybe it's a little bit more costly than you fucking thought. Are you fucking stupid? I mean, it really is one of those things that you're like, man, if you had thought about it for just 2 seconds longer, perhaps you would have thought far enough to know that this might not be a good idea. Maybe. Probably not. Apparently not. Number 5, major new initiative and expansion is delayed 1 full year by one of our partners through no fault of the PFL. So you have investors wasting your time, you have advertisers pulling out, and you have a full year of delayed partnership expansion because of one of your partners. Not your fault, definitely not you. And then you also have the other little issue of all of these fighters being very angry on Twitter. Yeah, sounds like a lot of hurdles. But, of course, the ever positive Donn Davis brings it back around. Like all entrepreneurial companies, PFL battled, navigated, and solved. PFL entered 2025 in our best position ever. Do not let others foil you, keep you down, stop you. To all entrepreneurs, you survived, declare victory. Well, plant your flag in that then, entrepreneurs of the world. The guy that you should be being inspired by, Donn Davis, says it to be so. So that must be the truth, right? All of these fighters out there on Twitter talking all of these multi-tweet posts about how they can't get their fights and that they are being treated unfairly, that their careers are being stalled and their money, their livelihood being put into jeopardy. You don't listen to that. You listen to entrepreneurial genius Donn Davis, who cannot name a single fight in the sport that he is entrepreneuring. Yikes. So, the last thing that I have for this is this think piece here by Zach Arnold from the MMA Draw newsletter. So shout out to them. Also, shout out to the 404, by the way, 404media.co. Make sure that you give them a free, you can subscribe for free. Just put it in your email address, get you on their newsletter. I don't know. They're probably not going to be doing much more MMA related coverage, but shout out to them for the good coverage of the Facebook situation. But the MMA Draw newsletter here, Zach Arnold reporting on the eve of the new year, December 31st, 2024. 2 very different directions for Rizin and PFL heading into 2025. So Rizin apparently is going one way, PFL going the other way. So this is basically, I'm not going to go through all of this because this is actually a very long piece here, but I'll try to go through some of the key takeaways. Basically, they're saying in here, or at least Zach Arnold is saying, that Rizin is really doing some big things in Japan. They produced a wild New Year's Eve marathon event at the Saitama Super Arena. Watched a very little bit of that. Seemed like a good time over there. I'd actually like to go back and rewatch all of that. Featured a couple of violent yet magical moments that you typically used to see a generation ago on Japanese mega cards. That's awesome. I know that Sakuraba's kid fought. That's pretty cool. For a split second, you could feel a pulse of energy from the past. Kazushi Sakuraba's son made his debut and won. There you go. So, Rizin looks like they are going towards becoming more of a friend to the UFC. It looks like Rizin and the UFC are strengthening their bonds. This is definitely something that I need to talk to Chase about on Monday. Because, I did see this thing that is being referenced here, Sean O'Malley going over there, doing a meet and greet and all that kind of stuff. And of course, Kai Asakura came over from Rizin to fight in the UFC. He did not win his fight, but apparently the brother of Kai Asakura, Mikuru Asakura, is fighting on this event coming up at the Tokyo Superdome. So, I mean, these are pretty large-scale events if they're holding them at the Tokyo Superdome. I mean, that's a large venue. May 4th, Golden Week, they're calling it. Apparently, Mikuru Asakura is a reality show star in Japan, and he's one of Rizin's biggest draws. So even bigger, perhaps, than Kai, who came over from the organization. But the point here is that Rizin is really pulling out the stops and trying to gain themselves a little bit more traction. Yeah, MENA is what it was. Middle East, North Africa. That's what the other PFL event that I was forgetting the name of was. But Rizin is trying to make a big splash here. They are getting themselves into a favorable position with the UFC, and they are throwing a lot of big events. The UFC, of course, wanting to court a Japanese audience, can probably do some decent business with them. I think that for Japan specifically, this makes a lot of sense for the UFC from a business standpoint. Japan has a long and storied history of enjoyment of fights, huge in the early days of MMA. So it makes sense that they would want to have a foothold in Japan. However, if Rizin is already a household name over there and doing very well, having events at the Tokyo Superdome, then the UFC might just be okay with getting whatever they can get from that fan base. They already kind of write it off as a little bit of a lost cause between Rizin and One Championship, which also gets Japanese fighters on occasion. So I think that this makes a whole lot of sense. They're saying in the article here that back in the day, Rizin used to be affiliated with Bellator back when it was Scott Coker's organization. I think a lot of people miss Scott Coker. Scott Coker seems like one of the few actually decent people and business people when it comes to mixed martial arts. No one really has a bad thing to say about Scott Coker. He's gone now. I mean, from the MMA world. So those days are also gone. But Rizin used to be affiliated with Bellator. Now Rizin's being affiliated with the UFC. No Bellator fighters were booked in Japan for New Year's Eve. Rizin has put in the work to be a friendly ally to the UFC. Dana's old friend from Pride has gone all in on embracing their role as a launching pad for talent bound for the UFC. So Rizin is becoming another feeder organization in addition to all of the other feeder organizations. When are we going to see Rizin on Fight Pass? That would actually be fucking huge. That would probably get me to fucking break down and finally get Fight Pass. It's amazing that I've covered this sport for as long as I have, holding out on getting a Fight Pass subscription. But that might actually get me to do it. I've never really had a full-on need for Fight Pass at this point just yet, but that might do it. There's a whole lot of shit on Fight Pass that I'd love to watch, and Rizin might be the thing that could push me over the edge. The ramifications of the new Rizin UFC alliance remain to be seen, but it's not exactly a positive development for PFL. Back to Donny Boy, back to PFL. PFL, meanwhile, is quietly heading into a make-or-break 2025 campaign. They have vocally disgruntled fighters on social media. No shit. The promotion is expanding operations through MENA. That's what we were talking about there, Middle East, North Africa. That's apparently not going so great, as Don Davis said in his LinkedIn post. The pressure is on to put on more fights while spending less money. A tough spot to be in, they say. Yeah, it would seem like that's a pretty tough spot, isn't it? Then there's the issue of where PFL stands with ESPN and what any new media rights deal might look like in light of upcoming ESPN/TKO negotiations in January. Another big deal. Of course, I talked about on the podcast what's going to happen to the UFC. Where are they going to go? ESPN in negotiations with TKO, who just signed a major deal with Netflix for their WWE brand. Could UFC follow suit? If the UFC goes away from the pay-per-view model, it's game over for any other game in town. More so than it already is. Could be very bad for PFL. One way. Could also be very bad for PFL the other way if ESPN forks over enough money to keep the UFC. Remains to be seen. All of that spells out a lot of moving parts, and Donn Davis is not in the driver's seat, this article says. We talked about the Tokyo Dome show coming up here. And if Ryzen falls short, it won't be for a lack of hustle or trying. Nobuyushi Sakakibara has placed his bets. They're talking about all of this big event here at the Tokyo Dome. They're saying, will there be UFC fighters there? You know, is there going to be a lot of cross promotion? There could be. Kai Asakura might not be the last. He could just have been the first of these cross promotional efforts, aside from the Sean O'Malley appearance. So we'll have to see about that. But if Ryzen falls short, it won't be for lack of hustle or trying. Right. Donn Davis and PFL are doing the exact opposite, says the MMA Draw newsletter. Donn Davis sends his love on LinkedIn? ? Another LinkedIn post. Other than random tweets that largely sidestep any sort of fighter criticisms about not getting booked for fights, the PFL marketing campaign has been low-key. Yes, their marketing is really not great. They need to up their marketing game. There needs to be better and more efficient grassroots fight promotion going on, aside from what they are already doing. They need to get creative with their marketing in order to sell what the UFC is already mass producing in this analogy. If they are a lemonade stand, the UFC is Minute Maid. No one is quite sure what to make of what is happening behind the scenes weeks before the company starts their Dubai event series. Is PFL going to be for Dubai what ONE FC is for Thailand? Could be. Is Turki Al-Sheikh completely done supporting PFL? That's the question that I had posed earlier. Donn Davis has, charitably speaking, struggled to get a consistent message across to the general public. In a very low-profile setting with Mike Heck from MMA Fighting, he struggled to name his favorite PFL fight. We saw it. Mr. Davis claimed he doesn't watch other MMA organizations. What other promoter in the MMA space would make such an assertion? Yeah, exactly. You think Dana White couldn't name his favorite fight? I was in Tampa live for the last event of the year. Dana White walked right past me. He was in the building. Dana lives this shit. Hunter was in the building. Hunter Campbell. The people who make the decisions for the UFC were in the building. They are fight people. Donn Davis, not a fight person. He's a businessman. Very positive one, but what's it equaling up to? Under pressure to obtain new financing, Donn Davis faces the nearly impossible challenge of putting out a message that can cut through the overwhelming noise emitted by the relentless endeavor machine that powers the TKO triple monopoly. Don't get it twisted. That is exactly what it is. The MMA Draw newsletter is on point with their assertions here. The parallels between Donn Davis and AEW's Tony Khan as public communicators are eerie. Tony Khan, of course, the AEW president. AEW is a rival professional wrestling organization that was created to be an alternative to the WWE and their monopoly on professional wrestling. Speaking of Davis and Khan, they are off in their private bubbles, unable to reach fans with a compelling message. At least Tony Khan is trying to win over internet fans. That, I think, is the crux of really what I'm getting at with this whole line of discussion about Donn Davis in general. Donn Davis puts out LinkedIn posts because he is a businessman on a business platform doing business things. He is not an MMA fan. He's not a fight person. Having to reference Hearn Hagler as your examples of great fights that you've seen, what your favorite fight is of all time, does not bode well for you as an MMA promoter specifically, Mr. Davis. And maybe you think that the general public doesn't notice that, but I think that you are fundamentally misunderstanding fight culture. I think you are fundamentally misunderstanding fight people. I think you are fundamentally misunderstanding your consumer base. If you think that that is the case, because you know who fight people are, they're nerds like me that are doing streams like this. And some of those nerds have much bigger platforms than I do. And this is the conversation that is going on. At least Tony Khan is trying to win over internet fans. Yes. Donn Davis is trying to win over LinkedIn fans. He's trying to win over people on LinkedIn. Business people in the suit and tie world. MMA is not the suit and tie world. I mean, it's a little bit more so now, but still worlds apart. Finally, the difference is that AEW is largely a hobby for Tony Khan. His family has Fulham and the Jacksonville Jaguars. He'll be okay. Yes, Tony Khan's family is very wealthy. They own those professional sports teams. Plus, AEW has a much larger brand profile than PFL. This is very true. It's not even close. AEW has run 2 Wembley Stadium events. The PFL could only dream of such a scenario. This is all very accurate. If you go back, what I was saying about the rapper at the PFL event when they had their little musical interlude that I felt so terrible for this guy rapping to an empty stadium, that's because he was rapping to an empty fucking stadium. Go back and look at the crowd shot from that, if you can find the VOD. There is no one there, and that is the stadium that they had for that event. Could you imagine something like that at Wembley Stadium? That was an arena. That was covered, but PFL at Wembley Stadium, you'd be hearing echoes 700 miles away. The reverberation could be heard from space. With this as the current backdrop, leave it to Donn Davis to send a message to the public on LinkedIn. I kid you not, read it for yourself. Archive link here. The letter raises more questions than answers, so let's very quickly go through Donn Davis's other inspirational post. And I'll read this now just because we're in the middle of this, but I want you to fully understand these posts that Donn Davis that we've gone through, the things, the communiques that Donn Davis has put out that we're going to be highlighting now and what we already highlighted, they are all he fucking does. This dude is on LinkedIn all the fucking time. He is a fascinating creature to follow on that platform because all he does is post things about how great PFL is doing, how much market share they're taking from the UFC, how many leaps and bounds they're making, how many of the world's top fighters they have. Boots on the ground, Donnie, boots on the ground. What do the boots on the ground say? Anyway, the letter raises more questions than it answers. New year equals new opportunities and new challenges. I selected this picture for this post as it embodies both the optimism and the reality of the entrepreneurial journey. Let's go to the actual post. See if we can get that. I don't know if we can get it direct linked. Oh, yep, it is. All right, let's see here. Where's the picture? So I selected this post, this picture for this post, as it embodies both the optimism and the reality of the entrepreneurial journey. And this is the picture. PFL on a very large PFL at the NASDAQ. 72 fighters regular season. This is when PFL, I guess, opened up the stock market, which I do think is something that they did. Again, business. Things in the business world. So I guess we'll read it all, the rest from here. All entrepreneurs reading this know the duality of optimistic joy and crushing reality. The ability to manage both while relentlessly move forward. That's also the other thing about Donn. A lot of typos in his stuff. The ability to manage both while relentlessly move forward is what each day of leading and living is about. New Year's resolutions happen each day. Think clearer, be more efficient, act more decisively, drive even harder, do better. This guy is TED talking every time he posts. Every Donn Davis post is a whole ass TED talk. Like, just imagine like giving a TED talk in front of a burning building. That's what I feel like Donn Davis is doing on LinkedIn. It's like, what's going on behind you there, Donn? Guys, if you want to succeed in business, you have to be a go-getter. Donn, it looks like your building's on fire. Here's a couple of key strategies to grow your entrepreneurial efforts in 2025. Donn, the rafters are coming down. Fire is spreading to surrounding structures. I'm going to tell you the way that I start my day. Donn Davis does one of those TikToks. This is how a 65-year-old man making $1.2 million a year starts his day. Anyway. New Year's resolutions happen each day. We said that already. Okay. Day one of Professional Fighters League, we were on the NASDAQ big screen on New York City's Times Square. Optimistic promise. Yes. Having yourself featured on the NASDAQ is certainly wishful thinking as to that leading to any kind of tangible outcome for you. Do you think that... Bro, what do you think that you gained by that? Do you think that a bunch of people... Like, I guess what you could say... I'll again play advocate here. What you could say is that in Donn Davis's mind, people know the UFC. So they know that mixed martial arts is a thing. They see that there's an alternative to the UFC, and one where the barrier to entry when it comes to investigation is much lower. Well, I know the UFC is very big. Maybe I can get in on the ground floor of this PFL thing, because I don't know much about fighting, but I know that the UFC is big. I know who Conor McGregor is. I've heard of that thing. I can invest in the PFL. They're looking for investors. Maybe that's the thought process. This is appealing to normies, is what he's doing with this. Again, just being woefully unaware of fight culture and the people who actually consume and live this sport. The real supporters, the people who are actually going to get you to your goal. It's not going to, bro, you can throw $1 billion, trillion, gazillion dollars at it. If you don't have the fans, it don't matter. Boots on the ground. Anyway, day 2,800, we are still working to fulfill our mission to build this company as we innovate this great sport. Hard reality. Yeah, he's talking about the shortcomings of the PFL here in a somewhat, stick to it attitude kind of way. Many founders post their company accomplishments at the end. Okay, I guess this is... No, wait, yeah. No, this is the different one. Okay. Many founders post their company accomplishments at the end. PFL also had great news 2024. Also had a great 2024. PFL became the undisputed number 2 MMA company worldwide and the number 1 fastest growing global sports company. What metrics are you using to quantify that, sir? I would somewhat dispute that. What are your metrics? Are you talking about strictly television viewership? Are we counting internet? How do you quantify that? If you're maybe revenue, okay, maybe if you're talking revenue, that could be the way. He says revenue. PFL achieved scale crossing the 100 million annual revenue threshold. That is fucking mind-boggling to me how that actually works out. I don't even know if that seems like it might be a blatant lie. I'm not going to say that it is, because that I cannot, I don't want to liable. I don't want to slander the good name of the PFL or Donn Davis by saying he is out and out claiming false information. So that's not what I'm saying. That just seems extremely hard to believe. $100 million annual revenue. I mean, if that's just gross, maybe. I mean, we're not talking profit with that. I mean, maybe that's, maybe it's all off Saudi infusion, perhaps. Okay. So sure, it is true. No liable implied. $100 million accurate. Audience. PFL broadcast and streaming viewing audience now 2 times larger than MLS. PFL year 6 versus MLS year 30. And PFL hit 24 million social media followers, 100% increase in 18 months. Yeah, that is one of the dumbest stats I have ever heard in my life. MLS, you know what MLS stands for? That is, I believe, Major League Soccer. Fairly certain it's soccer. I don't know. Is that MLS? What? Yeah, is it just Major League Soccer? Yeah, Major League Soccer, MLS. You know where Major League Soccer takes place? The United States. The one country on planet Earth that does not give a shit about soccer. We're the only country that call it soccer because we don't care about football if it ain't American football. So to say that the PFL broadcast and streaming viewing audience is now 2 times larger than MLS? No shit. No one watches MLS in this country. The only time that people ever watch Major League Soccer is if they are going to events. People will watch the local home team play a match because it's something to do on a Friday night. No one is watching soccer on television. The fraction of people in this country who give a fuck about soccer is minuscule. I can't even fully divulge to you. I mean, there are people in this country legitimately who cannot name a single soccer team, domestic or global. I, as a cultured person, of course, know about Man United and Arsenal and West Ham, all these English teams. The rest of the world cares about soccer. Could not give a fuck about MLS. You're comparing 2 different things. You're comparing global reach of broadcast for PFL with domestic reach of broadcast for MLS. No shit, it's 2 times larger. PFL hit 24 million social media followers, 100% increase in 18 months. How many followers does PFL have on Instagram? Instantly go to my phone to check that out. Let's see. PFL Instagram. 1.4 million. PFL Twitter. 1.1 million. How many of those are the same people with different accounts? PFL LinkedIn. 12,900. What did he say the number was? 24 million? Okay, PFL TikTok. $4.4. By my counting there, that's quick math 2.7. Did I get the math right? No, not 2.7. 6.7 or 7.7, right? So it was 1.1, 1.2, that's 2.3, 6.7. 6.7 based on the three most major platforms. What about Facebook? Not counting overlap. And yes, you can certainly meme my lack of math skills. I suck at math. 2.7. So would we say that was 2.7 on between the three, right? We just say that 2.7 between the three platforms. So 2.7 plus 2.7, 5.4. Where the fuck is he getting this number from? 24 million. I count 5.4 million. Based on at least the major social platforms. Again, not including people with accounts across platforms that are only single individuals. And that's fine that they don't count it that way, but the discrepancy is pretty large. Fighters. PFL roster now has 85 of the top 300 world-ranked fighters, and the UFC has 190. All others together total just 25. We've talked about the way that fighters feel in the PFL. But PFL is not perfect. We have a lot of work to do. We are still learning. We have many things to change and improve. PFL will always focus on getting better for fighters and better for fans. So new year, new opportunities. Let's go. PFL is not perfect. Yeah, you fucking think? Oh, Jesus Christ. So, anyway. Who the heck is the audience for this message? Business people. Do you notice what this message does not say as opposed to what it says? Yeah, I think we've gone over all of it. Donn Davis isn't promoting specific individual stars or fighters. He isn't promoting any major bouts or major arena dates. Given his prior social media appearances, does he know who he is promoting and what he is watching? No. UFC promotes its brand. They sometimes promote actual fight cards. Ryzen, the little engine that could, is big into themes built around stars they build up. Beautiful posters, world-class production values at venues like Saitama Super Arena and soon the Tokyo Dome. That operation and its partners believe in traditional building block promotional principles. Their longevity is starting to pay dividends after a decade's worth of efforts. Donn Davis sells spreadsheets. He sells numbers. He admittedly has limited interest in MMA fights and is busy trying to sell an MMA product to money marks and governments. Yo, big fucking shout out to Zach Arnold, bro. I'm going to subscribe right now to this newsletter after this stream is over because this guy is the fucking man right here. Anyway, I mean, I think that that's pretty much all that we really need to know about here. There's a whole bunch more. I encourage you to read the rest of it, but I think you're getting the gist. He does mention here, though, I do want to at least touch on it because we have talked about it again on the show. And yet, after all of the cash PFL has spent, Donn Davis finds himself in the same boat as Chatri Sityodtong and won championship, while his fellow non-UFC peers are busy taking big swings, trying to hit home runs. Of all the venues Donn Davis could have chosen to promote the PFL brand and the value of the fighters on his roster, why did he choose LinkedIn? Who is this guy talking to? Does he even know his audience? There you go. Couldn't have said it better myself in a very long-winded live stream that I am now going to conclude. So that is pretty much what I wanted to come and talk about tonight. This is, we'll call this one the Boss Rush stream tonight, going over what's going on at the top of the organizations you love so much and ones that you couldn't care less about and probably will continue to care less about in the future, depending on how things go. Anyway, everybody, my name has been Thinker St. James. This has been Yelling About Mixed Martial Arts. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hope to see you soon. Subscribe if you are new. Like the stream to help it out as well. Like the VOD if you're watching this after the fact. Make sure to tune in on Monday nights to last week's fights, the show that I do with Chase Parton right here on the channel, youtube.com/@YamaShow. That starts at 9 o'clock. If it doesn't start at 9 o'clock, it will start later than 9 o'clock. And I will keep you posted on start times always on Twitter and Instagram @YamaShow as well. New videos are out on the channel currently. One about Matt Hamill, one about Temba Garimbo. I'll probably end up chopping this up and maybe putting some of this stuff out as video content as well. So keep an eye out for that. Like it when it comes out. Appreciate everybody. Have a great rest of your night. And as always, everybody, fight on.
St. James.